Hello, I'm Lindsay von Tish, and we're back with the Bishop Fox DEFCON livestream, where we're learning about the pitfalls of trying to run a technically complicated setup at a hacker convention. And for any of you in the audience who want to be able to mess with our audio stream next, we are giving away 3 Flipper Zeros. I'm very excited to be hosting our panel, Mastering Your Tools, with some wonderful guests from Bishop Fox. I'm going to give them a chance to introduce themselves, starting with you, Leron.
What's up? I'm Leron Gray, Senior Security Consultant at Bishop Fox, an amazing rapper, a generally handsome man, PhD student. I'm everywhere. I'm doing everything. Thank you for having me.
That's awesome. And Josh, what do you have to say for yourself, about yourself?
I don't know if I can say generally handsome, but no, I work at Bishop Fox. I'm on the capability development team, and I lead a team of vulnerability researchers. And you can see some of our most recent work. I'm going to plug the blog on Bishop Fox's blog. I don't rap, but I do play Dungeons and Dragons. It's pretty cool.
It's one of my favorite pastimes as well. David, how are you doing today?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is David Vargas. I'm a senior consultant at Bishop Fox with the Red team and Leron's team there. Hard to follow the PhD student thing. No, nothing too exciting. I'm here in Vegas for our talk on OSDP, breaking OSDP with Dan here. And outside of Bishop Fox, I live in a very small mountain town. So that's about it.
Ooh.
That's awesome. You know, you said you didn't have much and then, revealed that you have an incredible talk coming up with Dan right here.
Yeah, hey, I'm Dan Petro, a senior security engineer now. I actually have engineer in my title these days. I was a longtime pen tester at Bishop Fox, so been doing that for a long time. I only have a master's degree, so that's disappointing. But yeah, we have, Dave and I will be giving a talk at DEFCON tomorrow morning.
That's going to be really exciting. I'm very excited to see that. And first of all, I have to comment on how excited I am to be able to speak with so many fellow Foxes here today. Dan, you've been at Bishop Fox a long time and have created so many memorable tools like the Unredactor, Rick Moat, and the PRNG Twister. Can you speak a little bit about the tool that you're releasing at DEF CON and Black Hat alongside David here? What inspired it and what does it do?
Yeah, so this all came about as part of a pen test, actually. So one of the things we do, part of the Red team, a team that David is on, is breaking into secure facilities. It's easily one of the coolest things we get to do at Bishop Fox. And one part of that is the RFID badge reader systems. So any secure facility you might encounter is likely to have one of these badge reader systems. You're probably familiar with them. Has a little red light on it. You tap a card to it, lets you into the building. And one way of attacking them that has existed before our research is you get a Phillips head screwdriver, you walk up to the reader, you unhinge it to access the little wires behind the reader, and then insert a covert little listening device. It's like a little tiny, 1 inch by 1 inch piece of hardware called an ESB key, and that will capture all the card numbers as they go from the reader to the back-end controller that's inside the building. And so we're doing this as part of a pen test, and the attack wasn't working. We kind of had no idea what was going wrong with it. So after a while, we just determined that it was actually a new protocol that was being kind of rolled out into production just recently. That is called OSDP. That's meant to be an encrypted protocol that is going to take over the old school Wiegand protocol that was the current installation. Most installations today are still Wiegand, but people are moving towards OSDP now. So I have a background in cryptographic protocols, so I figured why not take a look at this thing. And the contents are the contents of our talk, basically, that the protocol leaves much to be desired.
And David, how did you get involved with this research? What sort of drove you down this rabbit hole?
Yeah, so a couple of things. So first off, some background is I found out about Bishop Fox many years ago because of the Tastic RFID reader that Fran developed, right, a couple of years ago, and I always thought that was a cool project. So Dan posted in a channel back in December saying something about electronics, a question about electronics now. in a past life, about 10 years ago, I used to mess a lot with robotics and electronics and I used to like building a lot of stuff with that. And so Dan explained the research to me, which I kind of found it cool to get involved with something, go full circle, like help develop something along RFID, which is what caught my attention in Bishop Fox in the first place many years ago. So yeah, no, he posted a question about electronics. I was like, yeah, cool. Yeah, I'm down to help with this. And yeah, it's been a interesting few months, brushing all the raw stuff I had from not touching electronics for 10 years. But yeah, it's worked out. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, certainly in order to make a practical pen testing tool, it's one thing to find a vulnerability in a protocol, but you actually need to capture that and put it down into a tiny form factor, like a 1" by 1" gizmo that you can insert behind the reader. Because I can make this work on my laptop, but I can't take my laptop and shove it into the wall behind the little RFID reader. So needed to enlist the help of a nice hacker that knows something about electrical engineering. So
Yeah.
That's incredibly exciting. And then Josh, you're a part of our capabilities development team here at Bishop Fox, which is dedicated to creating new tools to improve the efficiency and effectiveness for people like me hacking into client systems. Can you share an example of some tools and technology you've worked on and the impact that that's had in uncovering vulnerabilities or enhancing security posture?
Yeah. So my recent passion has been kind of the intersection of vulnerability research and vulnerability intelligence. And that kind of the difference between I'm going to start hacking something and I know what to hack. The tool that I've built is called SploitsDB. It's just an internal tool that I've created for our teams so that we can take the customer asset management data that we have in Cosmos, the vast target data that we have, we can start really characterizing and understanding what technologies they're running and what technologies are important for us to target testing on. It's been just a different way to characterize our customers. And honestly, yeah, that has been one of my loves for the last 6 to 8 months, and it's been really cool. We have this ability to tie in the targets that we see, the technologies they're running, the vulnerabilities that are on those technologies, if they have public exploits, if the technology is listed in SysAkev or the vulnerability is listed in SysAkev. And so we can start to take a look and characterize our customers in more of what they should focus on in maybe patching or what our operators should look at and say, I know I can go after that. I know that a customer really needs to care about this. And if there's not a vulnerability that exists out there, or sorry, if there is a vulnerability that exists out there that no one's exploited before, then we can look at that and go, do we think we could create the exploit for that? Do we think that customers should care about this? Are there enough customers running this technology that we should care about this? There's just a ton of different ways to look at the data that our customers have and look at it in the lens of vulnerabilities. And that's just what I aim to do with this Swiss Army knife tool that I've passed off to our operator team.
That's such exciting work because it sounds like it's going to be helping pen testers, prioritize on time-limited engagements as well as throughout the entire company sort of highlight areas where we need more research and development.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's really nice to watch you. You took something that I said in a couple of paragraphs. And you're like, that's the one sentence that you meant though, right? Yeah, it is. No, it was really good. That's a great summary of it. And that is the goal. At some point, it would be, the dream is to expose this data out to customers. But for now, just having it in and handing it to the operations team so that they know what to go after and looking at my team and we know what to create exploits for. We're already finding and prioritizing vulnerabilities. And finding things that, really old software on a customer's attack surface that's worth just an operator taking a look at. It's an easy thing to say, hey, this is really old. Maybe someone hasn't loved this software in a while. Maybe that's something an attacker should look at.
Yeah, that's really important work.
Thank you.
And then, Leron, you created the Azure tool StormSpotter when you were with Microsoft. And last year you created DumpScan. Can you share a little bit of backstory behind the creation of those tools, as well as any future plans for anything you've got coming up in regards to tool development?
Yeah. So StormSpotter was made because, well, I didn't write the original version of it. So when I got to Microsoft on the Azure Red Team, there was a tool that was just sort of sitting in a repo somewhere that nobody was really using much, sort of, not really, called Acid Hound, right? That was the internal name. Because it was sort of built like Bloodhound is, right? It's a graphing tool, so you can visualize Azure Active Directory or Entra ID, whatever it's called now, with the resources that you could provision in Azure. And so like you could see the relationships between them. It was mostly just virtual machines and key vaults and like storage accounts at the time, I think. But I was also doing some other work at Microsoft at the time, and I sort of needed to decouple like how the tool was written, because originally it would just take all the data from Azure, then put it into a database like directly. But I was like, I need them to be separate, sort of like how, again, Bloodhound is built, where you have the collector, then you ingest it into the database, and then you can go view it. And so I saw that tool. I was like, oh, this is really cool. I want to work on this. And so I was given responsibility for it. I turned Acid Hound into StormSpotter. I think maybe I released it too early because personally, I don't know a lot of hackers who like writing front-end web stuff, and it was kind of trash. Honestly, it was terrible. I wouldn't use the first version of that myself, but I put it out there because just the concept of saying that, hey, you can have a graphing tool that can show this kind of stuff was really interesting to a lot of people. So I reworked it again. It looks way better now, but it is sort of still in limbo as I write the new version of it that is not under the Microsoft repo and now under the Bishop Fox repo. It's open source, so I can say that. I'm not stealing anything. So yeah, so I like writing the sort of open source stuff. And so the goal is to be able to provide just a big picture of everything that's in Azure, because the original version of that was written by the guy who also wrote Cryptography, which is I think owned by Lyft or somebody, I don't recall. But he wrote the original version of Acid Hound. He moved on to that, and he didn't include any Azure stuff in it. And I was like, cool, this gives me an opportunity to take that and just sort of own the whole thing. So there'll be another version of that coming out. I'm currently working on it very, very slowly as I work on other stuff too. And as far as dump scan goes, that project came up because, again, at Microsoft, there was an operation in which we had to extract some binary objects out of a process. It was like some RSA keys, but they weren't in the typical like begin RSA private key, like the little header thing, right? Which is what a lot of people do. A lot of people tend to look for just like common strings when they pull memory dumps. But the goal of dump scan was to be able to pull out binary structures. So you sort of define what they look like and then go look for them. That project worked really well for that particular operation. And I know it's been used by a couple of people outside as well, and they found some use for it. That project is currently on hold because I am turning that into my dissertation topic, and so I need a tool to release. So that one is on hold. It'll be done next year once I'm done with my dissertation, and I'll have like a whole framework and suite, so you can sort of just define arbitrary structures and be able to look for them. But it's mostly going to focus on Windows internals and Linux, or I guess common frameworks and libraries that are used for Linux, like OpenSSL and stuff like that. So that's the goal.
How do you declaratively define like that structure that you're looking for?
A lot of reverse engineering. Yeah. The Windows ones, right, you can do some of them, but like for example, like we know like bcrypt looks like, right? Yeah. You know that those are sort of defined open source. Microsoft released a library called SymCrypt, which sort of defines some of the other libraries, or the other structures. But underneath that, there's more structures that aren't like publicly accessible. And so I'm sitting in Binary Ninja all day, working my way through these different structures and trying to figure out what they look like because the debug symbols are not publicly available. So once those are sort of defined, and like Mimikatz sort of does the same thing, right? It looks for certain text strings, and that's sort of how it defines the spot, but that's maybe not the best way to do it if you just like look around a little more, but yeah, it's a lot of reverse engineering. Yeah. That's
incredibly cool and sounds like just a lot of work. I've got a really quick final question. Developing these cutting edge tools understandably requires continuous innovation. what do you all use to stay up to date on the latest technologies and find new projects to work on?
Maybe I'll start. Finding new projects to work on, I tend to cross interests. So like, I always find an intersection of like video games and hacking, or like, I want to try to get into hardware, like, and hacking. And so like a lot of my projects are like just the thing that I decided that I wanted to get better at, like in research form, and invariably what happens is I'll like find something that there's not a tool for yet. I'm like, all right, I guess I'm going to be the guy that writes this tool. That's just basically how Untwister happened, where like, but it's like there's lots of times where like as a pen tester, I really wanted to be able to like brute force, like enumerate the various values of an insecure RNG, and like I was surprised to see that there wasn't a tool to do that. And so me and Joe DeMasi wrote a tool to do that. I think that research topics just kind of fall out of the sky at me sometimes, but I guess that's how it happens.
Yeah, so in my case, it's usually a result of client engagements. So I'll be on something and I'll spot something, some sort of technology that looks vulnerable, and I know I want to poke at it more. And so, I end up going down this rabbit hole, and I tend to not to, and I should change this, but I don't release a lot of the stuff that I do write. I kind of keep it to myself, which I should probably change that. But yeah, it's something either that I see consistently across client environments that I'm like, hey, I need to figure out how to break this, or it's, well, with Dan, in the case of somebody approaches me and says, hey, you want to do something like that? I was like, yeah, cool, let's do it. So.
That's cool. The way that I really choose what projects to work on is more the CD team has a history of just supporting ops in Cosmos. Cool shirt, great flag. But a lot of times operators will have very niche problems or really expansive problems, I guess, also. And there's just a lot to choose from and what to work on next. The passion project for vulnerability intelligence and research has more been around me wanting to create a team of vulnerability researchers. So seeing where I want to take, where my interests lie, and then just choosing what to do next has been the greatest way of choosing next projects. But also staying up to date is really like a steep challenge when vulnerability research blogs are posted every day. It's like a lot of staying up to date with what's on, not Twitter, X, what's up to date on a lot of like blogs that we trust. There are a lot of really dedicated, cool researchers out there, and finding the niche researcher that's into the same thing you are really helps.
I think it's a combination of all those. A lot of times the tools that I write are for client stuff. I might come up with a quick idea, and then I'll just like draft it up real quick, and then win. I guess win.
Like the one you wrote recently for those.
Yeah. Like we had one engagement. This man went on vacation, and I was there, and I was like, yo, I need a tool that will help me quickly enumerate OneDrive files. And so I wrote this little terminal UI thing, and it looked pretty cool. It looks pretty cool.
Super handy too.
Yeah, it was just like real quick. I need to go through all these, accounts and stuff like that. But a lot of times it's either the client stuff or like I talk to a lot of people, a lot of the Azure researchers out there. It's a really close-knit group of people. And so a lot of the times we may hear ideas or just sit on, of course, X, which is aka twitter.com, or Slack channels. Slack channels are really big because there's a lot of information security Slack channels and Discords and stuff like that. And so just like being able to talk to people who make tools themselves and like come up with ideas is pretty handy, convenient. Yeah.
Thank you so much for being a part of this panel. And it's been so exciting to meet all of these people I work with in person for the first time. And we'll be back with the Bishop Fox DEFCON live stream after this break. So I'll see everyone in the audience soon. I'm Lindsay von Tish, and we're back with the Bishop Fox DEFCON livestream.
And I'm Tom Eston, a VP of Consulting in Cosmos, also at Bishop Fox.
And it is an incredible honor to have Phil here as our guest. From having over 25 experience in the IT and cybersecurity industry, and of course, all of the teaching you do both through Pone School and through the local community colleges, which is a huge part of why I'm here today. And of course, your podcast, which I know Tom's been on.
I've been honored to be on your podcast, and you've been on my podcast,
Yes.
so we podcast swap all the time. But yeah, welcome.
Yeah, thanks.
Great
It's an honor to be here, and I've been really bragging to people I know that being interviewed by one of my former students, I constantly brag about Lindsay. She's like one of the best students I ever had, and just to see how she's succeeding and just doing that at a young age. And one of the stories that I think is one of my favorites was at B-Sides Austin when she was speaking there. She was doing a talk on using game theory for security. The AV didn't work, and instead of panicking, she went to the whiteboard and drew it all out. So it's pretty amazing.
There was a lot of panicking too.
Oh,
I
I'm
just
sure there
tried
was.
to hold it.
You do a good job of hiding it.
And that was something an opportunity I definitely had because of your support and encouragement, and I've appreciated it so much all of these years. We would love to hear sort of about how you've created such a successful career in cybersecurity.
Sure. One of the things I would say that's helped me most in recent years is through the teaching, speaking at conferences, doing podcasts. Because one of the things I changed my mission in 2018 when I started teaching was to focus more on helping others. And when I did that, that's really kind of brought me a lot of success. Part of it's from exposure, and some of it, I think, just the universe rewards you for stuff, because I really love helping people. And in 2018, one of the things I did, I was a really competitive person. When I worked in jewelry sales, I was always number 1 and number 2 salesperson each month. When I was consulting, my bonus was based on billable hours. So I wouldn't come to summer camp because since I did Wi-Fi application network pen test, sometimes I would get 3 or 4 week long projects, and sometimes they paid better than the typical percentage. So I wouldn't take vacation until slower times of the year. So I wanted to hit those numbers and stuff. But in 2018, when I got into teaching, I kind of looked at my wife, what she was doing. She was teaching an ESL course. For those who don't understand ESL, it's English as a second language. She was teaching to people from Mexico and other Latin American countries that were, just immigrated to the U.S. And so I saw what she was doing, the impact she was making on her students. And I looked at my life and looked at the legacy I had. I was a power lifter, had a family, a great daughter and all this, but I really wasn't making an impact. So I figured I need to turn things more towards the strengths. I'm a good listener, coach, and the world needs good coaches and teachers and mentors. So I turned my focus that way. And it's been a great experience. It's kind of funny because when I started Pone School and started teaching, had less free time to do stuff, I used to watch movies, and I would watch at least 100 per year in movie theaters. And I started looking at my list at one of the Pone School meetings, and I thought, I'm not going to hit 100 movies this year. But the thing about it was I was a lot happier. I don't have problems with depression, but there's times that you're not always happy. But I noticed when I started mentoring, I was happy more of the time.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what are some, I guess, I think all of us, fail at some point in our careers, right? Have you had any failures that have maybe changed kind of your approach and maybe your career?
Yeah, one of the things I like to share, and I think it would be a good topic for a talk, was some of the things that's interesting to see people in their careers. Since I come from a pro wrestling background, you look at Hulk Hogan. He wanted to be a rock star, but if that guy would have been an actual musician, he may have not reached the success that he did. So sometimes we fail and we think it's a bad thing, but sometimes it leads us to where we truly fit. So, I tried pro wrestling, that really didn't work out, and other things, and so it just kind of led me into going back to school, to trade school. I learned AutoCAD, and then I found out about IT, shifted to IT, and I just kind of followed my passion. I was interested in security. I moved into security, then into pen testing. So I've kind of followed that, and it's helped a lot. But yeah, failures, you definitely, and one of the things I think people need to do with failures is I really would like to see people share that more, because sometimes people give this Instagram perspective. Everything's good, but they don't put the bad times. And you're helping others out when you realize that my life's not perfect, so they can kind of relate and say, okay, there's nothing wrong with me, this is normal, this happens to everyone. So I think really we should be transparent with those failures.
That's really important and very powerful. I think particularly with, a lot of us share our research and our passion on social media, and we should be more forthright with the struggle that it takes to get there. And sort of in a similar vein, as both a pen tester and a teacher, how do you stay current with the latest tools and trends, and find different things to learn about?
Sure. One of my main resources from the beginning, although it's kind of iffy if it'll be around, Twitter. So that was how I found X, who knows what it's called. And one of the things I joke about is, it would have been better when Yalon walked in with the sink and said, let that sink in. He should have walked in with a toilet, because that was
I like that.
But yeah, that was one of my main resources, because I found a lot of people. That's probably how I discovered Bishop Fox. One of the things I love in several marketing teams I've worked with, I've recommended them because they're always focused on the CISO persona. But a lot of times these salespeople don't realize, okay, it's not the CISO that's going to evaluate the product. Mm-hmm. They don't understand if they're going to pass that on to one of their subject matter experts or one of their direct reports. So they don't focus on that persona. And I've told them, when you're sharing tools, blog posts on how to do these things, maybe you're not directly affecting CISOs or whatever, but if you come up and ask me who we need to get to do pen testing, then that's who I think of. And this is even other firms too, and people that I've followed. So through like Twitter, all these researchers will share stuff there before you see it anywhere else. They'll share tools or people that may not be as well known. You find some good information there. So that's really how I got connected to the InfoSec community, just from like Twitter. And that's one of the main resources. And then just some of the different local meetups and conferences and stuff.
Nice. So you've been in the pen testing industry for quite a while. What do you think of the current state of pen testing, and where do you see it kind of evolving over the next couple of years?
Sure. Some of the things I see that are good and bad. One of the things when I started pen testing in 2012, it seemed like compliance pen testing really drove pen tests. It really helped the industry. So I'm sure a lot of people picked up business just because of PCI. One of the bad side effects is companies wanting to get pen tests done for PCI, and they really don't consider the big picture. And I think they're missing out. I think the narrow scope on pen tests, just doing the minimal, not leveraging things like social engineering or phishing campaigns. I think some of these phishing tools have kind of hurt that. And if you're running those automated tools, you're only going to see if someone clicks on something. You're not going to say what happens if there's a payload. You're not testing that. So I think companies are missing out on that. So some of the narrowed scope of things. But one of the things I think is exciting is to see the evolution of tools over the years. And some people are afraid of AI and machine learning, but I think it's really going to make some really cool tools, because you think at one time at pen testing, you didn't have exploit frameworks like Metasploit, or you didn't have Nessus for like vulnerability scanning. You had to do a lot manually, but that helped automate what you're doing and scale, because if you're doing everything totally manually, and if you got a very big scope, it's going to take forever. So I can see like Metasploit evolving to where it has some enhanced EDR bypass capabilities that makes it easier, less manual. And then you're able to take some of the junior level pen testers, get them up to speed quicker, and just make your job easier, and you'll be able to thoroughly test environments more. And you see things also like the breach and attack simulation tools that are out there now too. People can leverage that for purple teaming, and you could take some people that are not as highly skilled, bring them into that, let them learn, and then evolve into like pen testers or red teamers.
Yeah, I think you like me, and I'm sure Lindsay as well, like we all kind of welcome our robot overlords, right? In a lot of ways.
Yeah, it makes me think someone recently said that some comedian or something said that they're nice to their home assistant, so that way when the robot uprising comes, they'll take pity on them.
That's right, that's right.
Always tell ChatGPT, please and thank you.
It's kind of funny to tell Alexa thank you sometimes, because she'll say, oh, thank you. Or the response back is kind of funny.
I think that's a very good point that you made about the rise of these tools, particularly AI-based ones, definitely make it easier for people to break into the industry. And you co-authored your book, The Pen Tester Blueprint: Starting a Career as an Ethical Hacker, which is just a phenomenal guidepost for breaking into the field, and actively generate just an abundant amount of cybersecurity education. What keeps you motivated? I know we've touched on that a little bit. And do you have any advice for people looking to start sharing educational content?
Sure. The thing that keeps me motivated, there's times that I'll run my podcast and then with everything else you think, man, this is kind of tough. Sometimes you don't feel like doing it, but then I'll go to a conference, and I had a good example. I went to Hack SpaceCon. There was a couple that came to the conference. He was listening to my podcast, so they showed up for the workshop since I was there. And what was really cool is he was a construction engineer, and he's going to school for cybersecurity. When he walked away, his wife said, "Thank you for creating your podcast. There's times I can't encourage him, but your podcast does." And so when I say this is not me, this is my guests sharing their stories, because one of the nice things about the diversity of stories is there's something someone's going to relate to. Some of the episodes is not relatable to many people, but one episode I had was with a former coworker that he got his first pen testing role when he was over 50 years old. He came from a CAD drafting background, and then there was someone that watched his episode of the podcast that was a CAD drafter wanting to move into cybersecurity, so it encouraged them. I have people all the time that are saying, you know, I'm 30, 40, or 50 years old. Am I too old to get into cybersecurity? And I had someone on my podcast that was an esthetician. So she worked over 20 years in the beauty industry. So around 40, she went back to school, got a degree in associates in IT, and then one in cybersecurity, and started a successful career. So one of the things, the goals of the podcast is to encourage people and show them that it can be done. And one of the analogies I like to use is like a sports kind of analogy. When records are broken, you know, whatever record for what sport is not broken for one time and for a long time, someone finally breaks it, all of a sudden everyone's breaking records. It's not that people weren't capable, it's they believe that they're capable, and then everyone's doing it. So when you know, as anyone in cybersecurity, we should encourage other people. There's such a skill shortage, and just in general, you should be good people and help. But when you encourage others to let them know that they can do it, that's really cool. And that's one of the things that continues to keep me doing that. So the book and podcast, I run into people that I never would have met, never would have known of me, and I'm able to reach them and help. So the feedback that I get from that is what keeps me going.
That's awesome. So before we wrap up, you also have one of the most interesting backgrounds. Before you got into all of this, you were a pro wrestler, and there is a story about how you wrestled a bear. So you have to tell our audience, how did you wrestle a bear?
So yeah, I was back in my pro wrestling days. I didn't wrestle enough to make a living off of it, so I was lucky to wrestle once a week. So I was a bouncer in a nightclub in Denton, Texas called the Yellow Rose Country and Western Club. And they had bands like Thursday through Saturday. Sundays it was too expensive to bring a band in because there was not very many people there, so they'd have special events. And they decided to bring in this wrestling bear. So it was open to anyone to wrestle, but since I was a hometown guy, worked at the bar and was a pro wrestler, they decided to take one of my wrestling promo pics and the bear's picture and create these posters to bring people in. So anyone that wanted to wrestle the bear was allowed to, and so they did. And so actually they talked me into wrestling the bear, and actually wrestled him twice. So how I know that from the picture I have, that was the second time I wrestled, is they gave a t-shirt to whoever did the best that said, "I wrestled Samson the bear and lost."
Nice.
So I also had won a bar tab too. So after wrestling the bear the first time, I thought, that's impossible. I'm not going to do that again. And so after the bar tab, the owner of the nightclub comes up, "Hey Phil, would you wrestle the bear again?" "Sure."
That's so awesome.
That's such a cool story. One, because you wrestled a bear, but also it really highlights what you were saying about all of the incredibly diverse backgrounds that people coming into this industry can have. And who knows, there may be a bear wrestler right now watching this who really wants to get into pen testing. Thank you again to everybody who's tuned in, and thank you so much for being here,
Thank
Phil.
you. It's been an honor.
We'll be back with the Bishop Fox DEFCON live stream after this break.
Welcome back to the Bishop Fox live stream, The Art of Hacking. I'm your host, Tom Eston, VP of Consulting and Cosmos at Bishop Fox. And it is my pleasure to introduce our Hackers Arsenal in AppSec panel. So first I'll introduce Erez Yalon. He's the VP of Security Research at Checkmarx.
Correct.
Welcome.
Thank you.
And we have Vandana Verma. She's the Security Relations Leader at Sneak. Welcome.
Namaste.
And we also have Joylynn Kiru, Senior Cloud Security Advocate at Microsoft. Welcome.
Jumbo.
Awesome. Well, it's great to have all of you. And we are honored to have two members of the AppSec Village leadership team with us today. So to kind of start things off, can you both give us a snapshot of maybe what you do for the AppSec Village, and maybe share a couple teasers of what people can expect this year at the Village?
Sure. This is probably my most fun topic to talk about. 5 years ago, 2019, I founded the AppSec Village together with Leora Herman. Since then, as we said, it's our 5th anniversary this year.
That's great.
And the idea is to bring some order to the chaos of DEFCON and make sure that we manage to get some like-minded people that are interested and part of the application security ecosystem together. The cliche of a family is working well for us. Our villagers, the AppSec villagers, keep returning and they're very happy. We're growing all the time. So besides all the technical things behind it, we're also putting a lot of effort on becoming more and more hands-on. Not only giving talks, which we do, but also in parallel we have several workshops through the entire 2.5 days that we have the villages open, and many hands-on activities which we call pods, practical on demand, where people can just come in, join the conversation, join the activity, and learn something new. I think that Joylynn can give some spoilers about what we're going to have there.
Yes, so we have many workshops throughout the day and practical on demand. So we have like spot the true positive. So you do some code review and get some
nice.
vulnerabilities. We also have card games as well for threat modeling. Like we have very many things, and we also have kids workshops. That's happening tomorrow at 1 p.m. Workshop, and then we also have a practical on demand session for kids. So if you have kids around, please bring them over tomorrow at 1 p.m. Saturday.
It's so cool that like you are all doing that to invite kids into the conference and into the villages. I think that's so important. And DEFCON Kids is another area too that I know they're doing this year as well. So you got to start them young, right?
No, it must be. I want to say it's the next generation, but no, it's the current generation already.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So Vandana, as someone with a strong passion for the open source ecosystem and its use within applications, right? What are some of your favorite open source frameworks or software that you feel are on the cutting edge of protecting applications these days?
Sure, that's a good question. I would start off with OWASP because I'm part of OWASP. I'm one of the board of directors for OWASP. So most of the tools that I love all the tools, but if I have to specifically call out some of them, would be dependency check. OWASP dependency check is amazing because it can help in third-party dependencies, and it's one of the big problems around supply chain security. Then I totally love application security verification standard. It's more of a documentation project than tooling, but then it helps all the pen testers, anyone who's testing the application. So it has a great checklist. Because I remember when I was starting off, I only knew about top 10, and I created my own checklist, and I went to my boss saying that, oh, there's something which I've created. And then I get to know that OWASP is not just top 10, but much more than that, and there's an ASVS exist. So ASVS, Security Knowledge Framework, and what else do I love most? I also love CycloneDX. That's an SBOM project, but a wonderful one, supported in multiple formats. So that's another project that I totally love.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
API security.
API security. I was actually thinking that he will say that. Yes, API, OWASP API security. Yes.
And why do you say that?
He's one of the lead.
Yeah.
Yes. That's awesome. So let's talk about supply chain security as kind of part of an organization's overall security, right? When we're talking about enterprises, I think I saw a statistic, they have like on average 175 applications in their environment, which obviously that's a lot. I want to ask you, Erez, based on your experiences at Checkmarx and previous companies and some of your personal projects, how have you achieved success in mitigating supply chain risks?
So that's a tough one. I think that the story of supply chain security is the story of application security at the moment. If in the past we knew that application security means making sure my code is bug-free and then it's safe, these days are long gone. We are not reliant only on our own code. We have everything around third parties, which can be something as using someone's API, open source packages, some GitHub actions or containers that someone else created or used. So the part that we are actually creating ourselves is relatively small, and it's being taken care of, let's call it traditional application security. Okay, we have tools like SAST and DAST and all that. When we come to the open source area or the supply chain area, the problem is completely different. It's not vulnerabilities anymore. It can be vulnerabilities in something, but it can also be malicious intent of people. And we see more and more attackers actually using this as a vector to attack. And if in the past we saw that we heard some people saying, okay, so we'll work without open source. Again, this is not really something we can do. And what we have to do is be proactive. We need to look at the packages before we use them. We need to look at APIs before we use them. Because when it comes to open source and malicious intent in them, as soon as we run it, even once, it's like we know from viruses.
Yeah.
It's too late. So everything needs to be proactive. And organizations are not mitigating that very well at the moment because we are still in the education area, the education time. What we're trying to do is to educate the industry, to educate our customers, but educate the entire ecosystem that are using supply chain that are not under their control.
Yeah.
Right, I agree. And especially open source, people say that we don't use or we might not use, but if there was a survey that I wouldn't quote it, but then there was a survey done and 80 to 90% of the applications on the internet, they're using open source. When they're using open source, which means they're opening a can of worms for the vulnerabilities to come, risks to come, per to say. So it's very, very important to understand what do we have in our house. For example, your code has so many things, and then now we have containers, we have Kubernetes, we are using IAC code. So very, very important to figure out where things can go wrong. Think from that perspective. And we are shipping software, we are using third-party vendors. So very important to keep them stacked. Getting to know what do we have in our house. Like we have windows, we have doors in our house. But sometimes there are windows which we don't even remember they exist in the house. But when we go on vacation, like I love going on vacations, so I always quote that we should remember where things can go wrong, what windows are open or attackers can come in. So make a checklist. It's like an SBOM, creating a list of softwares, creating a list of vendors that we have, a list of applications that we have, because I was discussing with one of the company and they mentioned that we didn't actually realize that we were missing some of the applications from our database when we started scanning for Log4j. And it became so much critical that maintaining list of the application itself was a big problem rather than the dependencies. So I think, yes, that's very, very important to keep up to date.
Yeah, definitely. So given that like 75% of companies are directing their development efforts towards cloud native applications, we've seen the convergence of application security and cloud security. It's really, I think, a fascinating topic. Joylynn, since you're at Microsoft, and the public cloud domain, I'd love to get your insights on cloud native application development and the associated security risks with that.
Okay. So Okay, definitely when you deploy on the cloud, maybe in comparison to on-premises, definitely the attack surface increases, but you all have a shared security responsibility, and we all have to do a couple of things to make sure that our assets are secure. So I always say, for us, we have to be lucky all the time, and for hackers, they have to be lucky only once.
That's right.
Just from our conversation, we're talking about open source security, like you never know where the attack will come from. So you have to make sure that all your assets are secure. That's why, like for Microsoft, we have the Cloud Native Application Protection Platform, which we call Microsoft Defender for Cloud, which gives you like an overall view of your security posture for all your assets and gives you like a security score for everything. So be it like your VMs, your storage as well, your APIs, gives you a bird's eye view of everything. Also, multi-pipeline, multi-cloud, be it the major cloud providers, it gives you that overall view. And as well as your cloud workload protection, as well as your DevOps security posture, your cloud security posture management as well. So you have to make sure that you have everything covered within your cloud native applications.
Yeah, it seems that this has gotten a lot more complex, right, over the last several years with now these cloud native apps and the security associated with that.
It's complex, but according to me, it makes it easier because you also have cloud native security. So once you have them deployed, it's easier for you. You get to use all the features that is available to protect your assets. Otherwise, you wouldn't know which asset is actually compromised. You wouldn't know which asset is actually dormant, which you need to shut down. So, like I would say, it's easier, not really complex.
Right.
For me, it's easier.
I think that the complexity you're talking about is coming a lot from understanding that you need to protect everything, which is a good notion, but we have so many building blocks now. So again, you need to protect your code, you need to protect your microservices, you need to protect your infrastructure as code, you need to protect your open source. Each of those means another dashboard, another vendor, another a set of alerts. Some of them are doubled, some of them are misleading. We have alert fatigue everywhere. So a little bit of the blame of the complexity, I think, is on vendors, and I represent one here, so I'm allowed to say that.
That's a great point. Yeah.
But I think most vendors understand that now, and this fragmentation of going to so many different reports to protect one application, I think it's slowly coming together, and we're seeing more organizations trying to move to a platform that shows them everything in one place maybe, or take care of that for them, and they don't need to run like 10, 15 different tools. We're not there yet, but I'm optimistic.
Well, yeah, there is hope. And I think that's actually a good segue into, obviously one of the hot topics in the industry right now is AI, right? So how do you all see the impact of AI in the application security landscape? Because everyone says that AI is going to solve everything for us, and it's the future. Well, what's your thoughts on that? Maybe start with.
You want to start?
I would start.
You
Yeah,
wanna start?
sure.
Go ahead.
I'd say AI is here to stay. Everyone has their own perspective, and it's just my opinion. It has its pros. It has its cons. So there was a company which recently got hacked because their internal code was there on the internet because of ChatGPT, but not to blame ChatGPT. It's like somebody is using it, so it's going on the internet. But then I would say it is helping intern as well. It is going to mature the whole environment. Like if we are using AI in code security, then it is only going to mature the code. It is not going to say that, okay, there are 10 different vulnerabilities, or there are 11th one which is going to come, so it will highlight it. So AI is going to be really good in that. But then with great power comes great responsibility. So we have to use it carefully, and at the same time understand how much do we need to do it. I've been speaking with people around it, and they said that we have built our own internal system so that the data does not go out. the cache does not go out. So I think these kind of measures, if we take or conscious things or conscious steps towards using AI, I think it's going to help us. And there are people say that it's going to take away security people's job or something. I think it's only going to help us. Every time there's something new that comes up,
Sure.
like we work for vendors, and when code security tools started coming on, because we were doing manual code reviews, they said, oh, they will remove people and they do this. But trust me, it's only going to help us mature, innovate more, get something new. So my perspective, it's a balanced approach. But when you're using something, just be more mindful of what you're using.
So I think that AI in general at the moment is extremely hyped, as we know. But if you clean that hype away, it's a very good tool. And I'm saying tool and not a solution, because it is a tool that will help you to get to the solution. It's not something that stands by itself and is going to solve something miraculously. But if we use it in a smart way to help us make the things like patterns pop up better or anything like that, we can use it as a tool. Eventually it will mature more and help us more, but it will be one more step, one more tool that we can use to achieve security. And in parallel, because this is always a mirror and always a cat and mouse, we have new technology, we have new attack surfaces. So we all heard about prompt injection.
Yes.
Prompt injection was not available before we had AI prompts.
Yeah.
So this is something new, and this is something we need to deal with. This is the two sides of the coin all the time.
According to me, like, yes, we're all talking about AI for good, but also remember hackers will be using AI for their own good, so AI for bad.
That's right.
So the attack surface will definitely increase, so we have to be on top of our toes for sure.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, I want to thank all three of you for being on this panel. Great to speak with all of you. I hope you enjoy DEFCON and the rest of the time here in Las Vegas.
We always enjoy DEFCON.
Great. Enjoy the AppSec Village.
Thank
you.
you.
It'll be successful,
And
as it always is.
and
the Recon Village.
And we're inviting everyone to come and say hi.
Great.
To the AppSec Village.
Awesome.
And Recon Village.
And Recon.
And Recon Village, that's right. All right, and we will be back, so stay tuned for more from the Bishop Fox live stream from Las Vegas.
Hi, I'm Vinny Liu. I'm the CEO at Bishop Fox. What inspired me to found Bishop Fox? I didn't know any better. We were doing some moonlighting work on the side at our, and we had full-time jobs, and we were just passionate about doing, pen testing work and wanted more opportunities to do that. So we started taking on projects while we were employed, and moonlighting essentially, and one thing led to the next, and we kept doing good work and we kept getting more work. And they say the reward for doing good work is more work. And that's really what happened to us. And so after a few months of that, we realized that we might actually have something interesting here. And so we decided to start Bishop Fox. Something that's really unique about Bishop Fox is the amount of talent that we've aggregated into a single organization, a single firm. And it's important for us to know that we'll always be able to learn and get better from our peers and the other people that we're working with in our day-to-day jobs. And so that's something that really sets us apart and something we continue to foster and encourage within Bishop Fox as a team and as an organization.
The biggest reason I joined Bishop Fox was really the culture and the people. Every day I get to work with some of the smartest people I've ever worked with in the industry. And the culture here is just fantastic. It really feels like you're part of a family, you're part of something bigger, and everybody really believes in the same mission, which is really safeguarding our digital world.
Leadership and the folks that are in this organization are some of the smartest people in our industry, and some of the reasons why a lot of our clients today are with us. The people here are amazing. The people here are actually the reason why I came here. The culture, the team, and how it works together for each other rather than for themselves. It's a very unselfish culture. You're not going to find better people here than any other company I've ever been in my entire career.
For me, Bishop Fox was a career goal. It was my dream job, and honestly, there's a lot of days where I still can't believe that I get to do what I do, that I get to work with the people I work with. If you're somebody who's thinking about joining the company, if you're thinking about maybe I should go over to Bishop Fox, do it. It is a life-changing event, and it is, you know, I've found my home.
A day in the life of Bishop Fox is never boring. I learn something new every single day. The people that I work with are amazing and are so intelligent and care so much about the security, not just at Bishop Fox, but for our clients, for our country, just the entire world, trying to do the right thing before the bad guys do. It's just a great place to work.
I think the thing that I love most about Bishop Fox is the people here. And it's amazing to work with really smart, funny, kind people. Everyone that I've worked with has been super open to sharing their knowledge. And that's why it's a really wonderful, fun place to work, a great place to grow. We value passion here over pedigree. It's not like you have to have a computer science degree from MIT to be a part of Bishop Fox. If you love what you do and you're great at what you do, then this is a place for you.
Welcome back to the Bishop Fox live stream, The Art of Hacking. And I am here to moderate the panel on exploiting the cloud. I'm Tom Eston, VP of Consulting and Cosmos at Bishop Fox. So I'm going to now introduce our esteemed panel, starting with Mr. Matt Johansson. He's the Principal Security Architect at Reddit. Welcome. We also have Andy Martin, founder and CEO of Control Plane. Welcome. And we have Moses Frost, Senior Consultant, Red Team and Cloud at Nuvix Solutions. Welcome, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Great to have you here to talk about all things cloud, right?
I've heard of it.
Yeah, there is this thing where all the data goes, right? And
someone else's computer.
It's someone else's computer, exactly. Yeah. So to start off, I'd like to hear about how you all made your way into this cloud security thing. I mean, what got you excited about this, and where'd you get your start? Let's start with you, Matt.
Sure, yeah, I'm kind of an AppSec and pen tester by trade way back when we first met. Probably, I don't know, 12, 15, something like that years ago.
Eons.
But then, I wound up running security for a fintech startup that was built on Kubernetes back in 2015 when Kubernetes was still like in beta.
Wow.
So I was like one of the kind of first security people really focused on it at the time. So that led to a few conference talks and turned into a few other jobs that were very cloud and container security focused. That was, my transition from the red team side of things to the more blue team side of things. So I was like, okay, how do you do fintech startup in Kubernetes? Let's secure this. So I kind of figured it out as I went.
Awesome. All right, what about you, Andy?
For me, the cloud was a natural progression between just having a computer in the back room and working with bare metal where you rent someone else's infrastructure to suddenly, you don't have to provision a server in 1 week. All of a sudden, like you can get that in a couple of days.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, that's super cool. And then along with that came all the things like suddenly configuration management is a thing. And suddenly people start automating against APIs. But it was just a natural progression from, just some computer into other people's computers. But the amazing thing was, as with everything security related, as soon as people are generating new code and like developing new features, well, that's the first time you ship that code, right? Did you test that yourself? Who had a look at that for you? And there's been a constant, and like as you're talking about, like containers and Kubernetes, like we have the Linux kernel, and then there's new abstractions built upon, just taking things that we know, like C groups and capabilities, but they're now like in a new flavor with containers. And this whole like influx of new code suddenly has edge cases and untested code paths. And so it's just like the constant journey of security for me is just, okay, well, there's something new. And people probably haven't tested that as much as the people delivering the feature would have liked them to. And so cloud to, or the inverse, like bare metal to cloud, it's just an extrapolation of, well, there's something new that appeals to my sense of eternal novelty, and I'd like to see if there's a problem there.
And there usually is.
Generally.
What about you, Moses?
Oh, let's see. I started looking at cloud mostly because of this press release back in 2004 or 5 that NASA and Rackspace had built this thing called OpenStack. And I was like, that seems cool. Don't ever run that, by the way. never do that. But I got on. I mean, I was an early Linux user, like kernel 1.2, which meant that 1.2, 1.3, which meant that if I want to do something Windows related, like play a game, I have to use this weird thing called VMware, like VMware Workstation on Linux, like 1.0. Right, so super early days, and then that got me into virtualization, and I was really into that, and that's where I was like, oh, like what is this Amazon thing? I remember getting on Azure really early on and going, I don't understand what this is.
What's going on here?
I didn't understand. Yeah, so that's my journey.
That's cool. So Matt, based on your experience, you've been at Bank of America, you've been at Reddit, you are at Reddit. How have you seen the threat actors evolve their tactics when, I guess, thinking of like enterprise level cloud environments? Like, have you any examples or Some things you've been seeing?
Yeah, I've seen the gambit from, like I said, my first exposure was really at a small fintech startup, and then to gigantic financial institutions, and then kind of back down, but large social network, but almost down in like a regulatory environment and different, more modern cloud environment. And I think the threat actors on like all three of those things are still very similar in terms of like what they're trying to do day to day against you and your infrastructure, right? Mm-hmm. So at the end of the day, it's like, what's the lowest hanging fruit for them? Yeah. Unless you're dealing with like a much more targeted attack, right? So obviously, depending on your threat model and how targeted you're looking at, you're going to be looking at different things. So from the blue team perspective, like what we were very focused on across all of these different things was just misconfigurations, right? And it's just at what scale are you dealing with these misconfigurations, right? Are you dealing with, the guy that I sit next to that like is just trying this new Kubernetes thing and I know him and I can kick him and say, hey, why'd you do that? Or am I dealing with a 300,000 person global financial institution pushing changes all over to multiple different clouds and regions and vendors and all this kind of stuff, right? And so, for me, it's been very, okay, how can we focus on infrastructure as code instead of like getting in, early days, it was just get into the admin panel and spin up a box and like do whatever you can on it versus like, okay, how can we systematize this, right? So a lot of it is, okay, what are the misconfigurations that are super common around, you're spinning up resources like S3 buckets that, oops, there's too much stuff in there and threat actors are going to find that, right? And then also, you basically need a PhD in IAM on any of these cloud providers to like really do it properly. I mean, how many IAM roles in AWS are there? It's ridiculous. It's 4 digits, right? How many IAM roles, right? And so, meet someone who can rattle them off the top of their head, right? Or even find it in the documentation in any reasonable amount of time. IAM configuration is another really big one that threat actors like, right? It's like, okay, what is this? What is this account? Is this account secure? What does this account have access to once I get into it and that kind of thing? And then honestly, cloud or no cloud, the low-hanging fruit is still going to be some of the easiest, some of the stuff that has worked forever, which all too well with Red Team is just like phishing and going after the human and all that kind of stuff, right? So it's like, okay, can I pop this person? They have access to this, and then I can kind of pivot around. Yeah. Right?
Well, speaking of kind of red teaming and that kind of thing, Moses, I want to ask you, what are the most critical security vulnerabilities or weak points maybe you have uncovered in cloud environments?
So I will have to say, I was hopeful 10 years ago when we started going to the cloud. I was like, oh, look, we now have the ability to programmatically fix things. I was so wrong.
Because I programmatically break them.
Yeah, now we find out that I can programmatically do a lot of things that I should not be able to do. So two bugs that came to mind, right? And one of them dovetails to the IAM thing. So we still find people using default roles in AWS and other places, which is common. What was really interesting is one of the roles that we ran into, I think it was like Amplify admin, right? It was like a mobile app thing. And so I'm looking at it and it's like a hardened set of IAM permissions at the top. And I'm like, oh, this is kind of like whatever. And then at the bottom are like duplicate permissions with no constraints. So anybody that was like an AWS Amplify admin could basically spin up Lambdas and do whatever. So spun up a Lambda, attached administrator access role, spit out some keys and just went to the races. Nice. And they were like, what happened there? The other one, which is more esoteric, but I think we're going to find more of. And I was explaining this to somebody just yesterday. This is one of our guys found it. Basically, it was they set up a Cognito thing, right, like an IDP thing. And this company had set it up to hook up to an old system like Django or one of these Drupal or something, right? And what they did not, there was a miscommunication. I remember this used to happen a lot with like mobile app devs and web devs. The miscommunication was on the app side, you're not supposed to be able to use a claim that is changeable, like changing your email address. Shouldn't be the thing you mark a user with, but they used that on the other side, on the far end side of the house. So we were just changing our email addresses and taking over accounts using Cognito. And those are things that are really edge case bugs. They're really weird, and those are the ones that we kind of go after now. And we're like, this is really an interesting bug.
That's
you know.
cool.
Yeah, pretty cool stuff.
That was really cool. So Andrew, as someone who's enthusiastic about Kubernetes, I was going to ask you what the hell is Kubernetes?
It's impossible to know.
Yeah, no one knows, right? The true definition, right? What's your take on cloud native and container security challenges? What have you found to be the most pressing?
Right, so first of all, I will rely upon a friend's definition of what Kubernetes is. It's a robot to which you express your hopes and dreams in prayer.
I love this.
And hope that vaguely reconciled into a state that you recognize.
In YAML.
That's
in
amazing.
YAML.
YAML. Yeah. It has to be in YAML.
It's gotta be
Exactly,
YAML.
exactly.
That is amazing.
All my prayers are in YAML.
Yeah. All your hopes and dreams are in YAML.
I have Tabitha Sable to thank for that particular definition.
So good.
So, what we gain with this aggressively declarative interface is uniformity. And that means that the whole journey for cloud APIs is that suddenly we get application programmability or infrastructure programmability. And then Kubernetes takes it one step further, which is we try and perform like almost a Terraform-like dream of abstraction across multiple clouds. And I say dream in the truest possible sense, because of course there's always specificities and nuances that require annotations or specific configuration for the cloud. But broadly, the dream is that you define it once. What's it called? Write once, run anywhere. I think that's the dream. Yeah. That's what it's supposed to be. So Kubernetes and cloud native in general bring us this state where things are declaratively mapped, and therefore we have a constrained set of security configurations that we can then reason about. Now, where this becomes almost unbounded complexity is, well, how many kernel APIs do your developers know about? Can you drop some capabilities for me? Can you write a seccomp profile? What does AppArmor mean to you? Do you turn off SE Linux? And while we have all of these kernel primitives given to us in an easily configurable declarative interface, realistically, containers are just a packaging and distribution format for most people. It would be incredible if we truly exploited, and I mean that in the inversion of the term, if we truly utilized the capabilities that the thing gives us, which are we can ship security profiles on a per process basis. Containers really should be a single process per container, and then drop all privileges, prevent any file system access that's irrelevant. We don't bundle dependencies that we don't need. You know, this is the dream of containers, a very slim attack surface, potentially distroless. You know, we don't even ship a shell. We don't even ship anything. Obviously, you don't package a kernel inside a container because you're running a process on a shared kernel, which is the fundamental difference with VMs. So, I mean, what is the most pressing question? I think we still haven't gone back to the basics and appreciated why containers are so good, which is from a threat model perspective, yes, we're multi-tenanting a single process on a host, but we have a constrained file system access. We have the availability for limited system call interfaces. We have the capacity to then use namespaces to analyze the behavior of that process, fully constrained to just the thing it's supposed to be doing. But what happens? Well, people pull like monster containers with everything in. We get to Kubernetes and the almost sort of psychologically unbounded complexity of, okay, so we know now we'll have to be, just loop back slightly. Google have no DevOps engineers, right? But they just expect everyone to be full stack. So they didn't have DevOps, they moved to the next thing, which is SRE. Engineers these days are expected to build a front-end application and then build a back-end for the front-end and then understand what system calls they're using and build a security profile for the container that's running in production. People just give up. So we just ship whatever is needed to get a feature that beats our competitors to market. So in terms of like the pressure in containers and cloud native, minimum viable security is just scanning the thing for software like composition analysis.
Yeah.
My personal dream is I wish that people actually wrote security profiles, but we're still in formative dark ages.
I mean, and you said the difference between a container and a VM, and I don't think most people are even using containers like true microservices with a single process the way you illustrated it, right?
No.
It's like, oh, this is like a new VM toy, right?
Yeah, just pile everything in. It's just a bundling and distribution mechanism.
I saw one the other day. There was like a bunch of pods. Every single pod had Debian full in the container. I'm like, you need this? And they're like, and everything running is root.
Yeah, why do it?
Everything.
Why run? Why even containerize and use and all this kind of
because the boss. The boss told me.
Yeah. Well, don't worry, AI will solve it.
Yeah. Speaking of AI,
what a segue. Perfect.
So how do you all feel like that's going to change cloud security, if anything? Is it robots taking everything over, or is it just another tool in some ways?
Yeah, I think it's just another tool in the tool belt. It's definitely lowering the bar of entry, especially just ChatGPT. I know we say AI, right? But okay, let's just talk about ChatGPT for a sec. Just conversationally being able to like spit out code when you have limited knowledge and how to do that in general is definitely lowering the bar for certain people to, even deploy stuff that's insecure, right? Because they're just doing whatever ChatGPT said. Or vice versa, an adversary that might be less skilled now has a helper, right? In building an adversarial tool. So I think that's at least the first iteration of what we're going to see AI change things with, and then who knows what ChatGPT 5 or the next Llama 3 or whatever is going to help in the future.
Yeah, but looking at it, and we've done the things that everybody talks about. We've done the write a phishing email in an operation and send it in. And that was kind of a funny one. We wrote a phishing email about how AI was going to replace the person's job, and we had AI do it.
It's very meta.
Yeah, it was very meta. It was a very meta one. They were like, "What did you do?" Anyway, so I can't wait for Pen Test Buddy GPT, where it's going to be like, "Hey, I got a bunch of
it already exists.
Common issue that we have, right? Like, where is the data on these 4 billion buckets? Go Chat Buddy GPT, tell me, because they can do a better job at distilling it down.
I know folks who have written versions of this for themselves. It exists.
Yeah.
It's just not public.
Yeah, it's not public. Exactly. Yeah.
It will be public. I'm sure someone will open source this, right?
Yeah. So kind of wrapping up here, I want to ask each of you, what is your best piece of advice for people wanting to get into cloud security or pen testing around the cloud and that kind of thing? Like what advice would you offer them?
Get your hands on it. There's no book or course or anything that'll teach you what you'll learn by trying to go and deploy this yourself would in half the time, right?
Yeah.
So find an open source project that you can help contribute on, or just start kicking around yourself. Sign up for your free tier AWS account, and please don't leave it running so you get charged some crazy bill. I've heard horror stories, right?
Oh yeah.
But yeah, just try to deploy your full stack yourself and see what it takes at each point of it, right? Get your hands on all the different, how many AWS services are there now, right? In terms of data stores and data lakes, and Route 53 is a database, right? Just get in there and start messing with it is my best advice. I learned so much more hands-on than I do, watching a YouTube video or anything like that.
What about you, Andy?
100% behind that. I think, but it's something that doesn't keep me up at night, but causes me some consternation is when I started my career, I had tin, right? I could see the thing. I could take the lid off and blow the dust out. And at this point, we are multiple layers of abstraction deep. So somebody who is now entering the job market, out of university, out of a personal growth phase, has to deal with, what's on the tin? What sort of virtualization are we using? Is it hypervisor? Is it kernel level virtualization? Are we talking about containers? And then they have to deal with, what's the programming paradigm? We're no longer just everything's gang of 4. We've got all these different, in a good way, all these different flavors. So for somebody to cut through the mustard to aggressively butcher multiple different metaphors requires a hell of a lot of in-depth knowledge. And a super difficult thing is to identify who you're going to understand those things from. Where do you go for those specific pieces of advice? So I love a lot of the stuff that the Linux Foundation is doing. There is really kind of end-to-end, formative through to advanced, kind of hanging off different branches of the trunk of
really good Kubernetes security. Kubernetes
absolutely, yep. 100%. And a lot of that stuff is for free as well.
Oh, that's great.
So I think it's very difficult to like self-identify that journey, but finding places, I mean, obviously we both spent time in SANS as well, finding those like formative places where the Linux Foundation will give you this, and then Twitter will take you like halfway through, and then you've got to find the people on LinkedIn to follow. Really, I think for an individual, it's how much can you resist the urge for constant novelty and anchor onto things that are like core principles. And then when you start to work on the like upper echelons or like strata of the tree or the branches, where do you go to look? So yeah, I think like Linux Foundation fundamentally, finding thought leadery content from a like social perspective on whatever Twitter's now called or LinkedIn. And but it really comes back down to if you have the self-motivation to drive yourself through it, then hands on keyboards, you know, that's really the ultimate learning experience by example, and learn by mistakes and bounce back from those.
Yep. Anything you'd add to that, Moses?
Focus practice, I guess. That's what I would do. You got to be pretty sure to focus in on what you need to know. Like find something that you're deficient at and kind of focus in on that one thing for that week or whatever. I would say, you know, what a gift, right? In the when I started doing this work, I'm sure when some of you here started doing this work, you had to have physical equipment. There was no choice. You just had to have laptops, and there was no VMware. You just had to ship around machines or whatever. And nowadays, you don't even need a lab at home. You don't need a data center at home. You just kind of turn things on in DigitalOcean or Amazon Cloud. Do that, you know? That's the first question I ask when I hire people. Do you have a lab? No, why not? Because that means you're not practicing, right?
Yeah.
So
got to practice the craft.
Yeah,
absolutely. I would also add bug bounties, right? You have permission to attack these things. You want to practice attacking them, you have permission, go.
.gov, right? You can even attack .gov.
Yes, you can.
It's on, it's on Hackeroni or whatever.
Never heard that before.
Yes.
Hackeroni? You'll never unhear it.
Yeah. Well, gentlemen, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on the panel. So thank you all for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks.
And for everyone else watching, stay tuned for more from the Bishop Fox live stream from Las Vegas.
Welcome back to the Bishop Fox live stream. I'm Alethe Denis, one of our co-hosts today. I am on the red team at Bishop Fox as a senior security consultant and focus predominantly on tabletop exercises and social engineering.
And I'm Lindsay von Tish, a consultant pen tester here at Bishop Fox, where I focus on application security and IoT OT devices.
This afternoon, we have joining with us today Chloe Masdagi. She is head of threat research at Protect AI. She's a very highly sought after speaker at the InfoSec conferences and hacker conferences alike. She's listed as a power player in cybersecurity by Business Insider and SC Media, and a board member of the Diana Initiative. Welcome, Chloe.
Well, thank you for having me. By the way, I love your logo. I have a thing for foxes. I think we all know that, though.
Yes, we all know that. Just make sure that that one's still there when Chloe leaves.
I know you're amazing at the social engineering village, but you haven't seen these thieving skills I may have.
I don't doubt that at all.
That one in particular. I see the eye on that. That's the one I would want. That one is so amazing.
I've been pretending to put in my jacket between takes.
Right. Pretty soon they're gonna just go, oh, she's just messing around, but then it will disappear for real.
Yup. We're so excited to have you here on the Bishop Fox live stream. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're the most excited about and what you hope to accomplish here at Black Hat and DEFCON this year?
Oh my God, great question. So I would say the thing that I'm really pushing forward is changing a few different things in our industry. One is I gave my first talk ever at Black Hat on climate change. First time Black Hat had to talk about climate change. So that was really amazing. Diana Initiative, I was there talking about marginalized genders. How do we create safe spaces for them, but also how are we allies for one another? And it's not just like men versus women. It's also like men need help too. So that was something that I worked on. And then I work for Protect AI, and we launched a first ever bug bounty platform for AI ML, and we focus on OSS, and it's called Hunter. So we launched that 3 days ago.
Oh, wow.
Of all these things. And the one thing I would say that I'm hoping for is to change the conversation with AI security. Let's drop the ChatGPT conversation, the LLM conversation, because there's way bigger threats at this time, and we're avoiding it completely. And so that's what I'm hoping to accomplish at DEFCON, because I believe the hacker community is going to push that forward. So then the Black Hat folks know, and by Black Hat folks, I mean the people that attended the conference will actually hear and listen and move this forward at this time.
Be the threat that you wish to warn about.
Right, exactly.
As a leader in the cybersecurity field, what do you see as some of the most pressing challenges right now and in the next coming years?
Misinformation on AI. I think the one thing that terrifies me the most was when I first joined Protect AI, and I realized that the security researcher community, the hacker community, has absolutely no idea how to go about like hacking AI ML. That terrifies me, because that means there's so many vulnerabilities out there and we don't know how to solve it. And data scientists and ML developers, their whole thing is not security. So they're wholly relying on us, and we don't even know, we can't even get our talk straight. Like just a few months ago, we were still having a conversation saying like, don't call it AI, call it ML. But at the end of the day, it's like, let's move past that. Let's get to the serious stuff.
Yeah.
That's really important. And you're the head of threat research at Protect AI, an organization focusing on building a safer AI-powered world. What are some of your concerns or direct threats that you see to AI, that you see coming like to AI?
Oh, geez. The one, I mean, my colleagues would say like supply chain is going to be one of the main ones. For me, the thing that terrifies me the most is data poisoning. I remember I was on this call with an individual when I just started working there, and I was always hearing about this red light green thing as an example. So they always say like data poisoning, and the things you need to be worried about when it comes to AI security is, say, for example, a threat actor changes the light when you're driving your car to like green when it should be red, and causing collisions and traffic incidents to occur. But to be honest, the one that really hit me hard was the fact knowing that threat actors, for example, in Russia and Ukraine and what's going on right now, is that threat actors from Russia have been able to get a hold into the drones of Ukraine. And so the drones are programmed by a certain image. If they see a certain image, they'll target and shoot at it. So they had a program that had an image of what a Russian tank looks like, so to fire at a Russian tank. But threat actors changed it around into a school bus.
Oh, goodness.
And I remember hearing about that and being terrified to my core, because I just remember like reaching out to so many people in the hacker community, like, hey, do you know anyone who's doing any hacking on AI, ML, and in the bug bounty world? And no one could give me names. And that's terrified me, because I'm like, oh my God, we're talking about people's lives. We're not talking about traditional security. We're talking about people's lives. We're talking about our world. We're talking about chaos. If we don't step up and build this bridge right now, I don't know what's going to end up happening. And it's not to catastrophize here, but the reality is like, we are not prepared for this at all.
Absolutely agree.
Yeah, I think you're doing amazing work to highlight just the importance of starting to focus there. Sort of in the opposite direction, what are some things you're excited about as far as AI possibly helping from a security side?
Well, I honestly believe the hacker community is the community that will always be there to protect us and the society that we live in. And the one thing I have so much faith and hope is because, for example, we're just at the Misinformation Village giving a talk about like what are the real threats in AI security. And in that room, people were taking down notes. People were they were dumbfounded in their face, like, oh my God, I didn't know that this is something that I need to be aware of. So that's letting me know the hacker community, they just need to know about these things. And when they do, I know that they're curious like a fox. And they're gonna do whatever they can to figure out, what do I do next? And that's the thing I love about DEFCON, and it's that place where you start movements and you create that change that we need.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love what you just said about starting movements and creating change here. And you're just such an incredible catalyst for that.
Thank you. I will not blush today.
So Chloe, we've heard that Protect AI launched something exciting for security researchers recently. Can you tell us some more about that?
Yeah, so Hunter, it's HUNTR.MLSecOps.com, and it's the world's first ever AI ML bug bounty platform, and we were focusing on OSS at this time. And when we launched it, the other thing was because, remember I was saying earlier that I was trying to find security researchers in this space, and I couldn't find any. So before we launched, I was like, we need to get educational content out there too to help people that are trying to break into this industry or this particular area field to know what they're doing so they don't feel like they're dealing with imposter syndrome. And by the way, no one should experience imposter syndrome because no one's in it. So nothing to compete or compare yourself with, which is fantastic. But so MLSecOps.com, we have a community of data scientists, ML developers, security researchers that are building bridges and communicating and learning from each other of how to fix this gap right now in AI ML security. But we also have educational content of videos of how to hack, like, you know, the various different vulnerabilities that my colleague Dan has found. He found like the ML flow, like look it up, it's incredible. Like, it will change your world when you're thinking about hacking things like AI. Those vulnerabilities are very serious.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there anything else that you'd like to tell us about MLSecOps, the initiative, and how you're working with others to accomplish that?
Yeah, I would say when we were just doing that panel at that Misinformation Village, it was really interesting because we had one of our colleagues was standing up in the back and noticed that people were opening it up on their phone, like looking at the website because they're eager to learn, because for the first time for many of them in that room, all they knew about was LLM as the only pressing issue when it came to AI ML security. So we started seeing people joining the Slack group, and then Hunter has a Discord. And so we've seen a surge of people getting on the Discord, having conversations, and like trying to find this challenge. So we have a challenge. So every month we drop a new challenge, and these are boosted amounts. So the payout is like way more, like this one is 40% more. So if you can find vulnerabilities on Hugging Face transformers, you can get 50K.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
That's the thing. Like I've been telling bug bounty hunters, like, you think that your bounties are big.
Yeah.
Wait until you see this, because AI bounties are massively bigger. And when you find one, it kind of does a trickle effect. Like we were talking about this earlier, it changes people's lives, that type of income.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it also incentivizes the opposition for attackers to start investing more time and effort into that space, because there is an incentive. You make a dedicated effort to spend time contributing to charitable cybersecurity issues, like being a board member for the Diana Initiative. Can you tell us more about this and what inspires you and what you focus on there?
Oh man, that's a big question. Okay, so I recently joined Diana Initiative as a board member because the nonprofit that I co-founded with my co-founder Maria, we did this one called We Open Tech, and it's there for marginalized genders. And one of the things that we realized is that right now across the country, there's growing anti-trans messaging out there, and also there are people in our own communities and in our industry that are very anti-trans. And so one of the things that we realized was that companies didn't want to donate because they were worried how their board members would react, how the people would react to it. And this left us with like, okay, so the only way we're gonna get change now is literally collaborating with each other. So contact Diana Initiative saying, hey, can we come together and expand Diana Initiative, because I think this is going to be the only way forward at this time. And amazing group of people, and we came together because we realized that, you know, we have to serve marginalized people in this industry. That includes trans folks, and we cannot leave them out of the equation anymore. There's plenty of women's cybersecurity groups, and those are needed. They're very valid and everything like that. But we also have people in those type of membership in those clubs that aren't really inclusive to non-binary folks and trans. And that's so sad because these are human beings and they want to be themselves, and we should allow that to occur. And so I'm so proud of Diana Initiative. Like, this year was fantastic how they have been, and I am so thankful to be part of that and to like try and do whatever I can to expand it, but also to work together with the community to really make sure that trans folks and non-binary folks are welcomed in this community and stay in this industry. And they should not be left out of the equation when we talk about gender equality in our industry. They deserve to be at the table. They're just as vocal, and they've been doing so much work. We wouldn't be where we are today without trans and non-binary folks in the hacking community. So leaving them out is such a disgrace to humanity in our industry.
I absolutely agree.
I think it's incredible that you saw the level of just horrific hate and vitriol leveled at transgender and non-binary people, and saw how that was pushing away a lot of support, and decided to, you know, step into that and hold a place for them. I think that's incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the reasons why I joined the CFP review board for the Diana Initiative, is because they support all underrepresented groups. And I believe that having groups like your own and others merge together, we can only make a bigger difference if we come together and work towards the same goals as a group. What advice would you give to aspiring cybersecurity professionals who aim to become leaders and positively influence this industry?
Okay. If you're someone who's marginalized, that could be someone who's neurodiverse, someone who came from a different economic background, didn't have an educational background. It's anything. So marginalized isn't just based on gender and race in itself. But the one thing I would say is, I know at times you're going to feel like you don't know enough. And it's going to be hard to feel like you can be vocal in a room. And to start something, try something new, it's going to be hard as well. But just do note that imposter syndrome, don't let that impact you, because it is something that we use as a term because there aren't people like you in the room that represent you. And when you're the only one in the room like that, it makes us question, do I deserve to be here? Should I even be in this room? Am I as smart as I think? And just know that please don't feel that way. You are welcome there, because all of us are always on this journey of learning. And anyone who's saying like, oh, I'm the best at this, I know this stuff, I guarantee you they needed an ego check. So, you know, stay strong, stay in this industry. And if you ever feel alone or isolated or anything, you know, there are people in this industry, like any of us, you can DM us.
Absolutely.
And know you're not alone. And thank you so much for existing and staying in this space. I know it can be difficult, but you're welcomed here and you belong to be here too.
I'm sure this is a loaded question, and you probably have a giant answer, but is there any way that you can describe to us your future goals and aspirations within the cybersecurity industry and how you plan to continue driving positive change in this field?
I would say that, you know, whenever I hear something not being talked about in our industry and I know that there's people suffering, I will give them the mic at every single time. And, you know, I'm incredibly thankful for where I am. And that's pure luck in many times, and pure timing is great. But I think just listening to other people and then take the initiative, take that action to, you know, how can I help serve this population? How can I help serve this? But I really hope that another thing besides like AI security and making sure there's room for marginalized genders, the one thing I really hope is that we start talking about climate change, because we're not talking about it in our industry. And people are very concerned to talk about it because they're worried that they may get fired if they do bring it up at their work.
Absolutely.
And that's a concern that I have, because climate change is impacting us all. And I really hope that I won't be the only person talking about climate change, because it's been like that for like a couple of years now. So I would love for other people to talk about it too.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Chloe. Again, Chloe is the head of threat research at Protect AI. And Chloe, would you like to give a place for people to contact and reach out to you if they'd like to?
Yes, yeah. So this is what you're gonna do. You're gonna go to @ChloeMistagi on any social media, DM me at any time, add me, follow me, do whatever you want. I am here as a resource to help guide you in whatever you need. Check out Hunter, it's huntr.mlsecops.com to check out our bug bounty platform. And there you can also find the education content to get started. Do join our Discord and Slack if you're in the hacker community and you want to get started. And once again, don't let imposter syndrome get in the way, because no one's in it yet. So you have nothing to compare yourself to. So you're going to be just as confident as everyone else in that room. So thank you.
Thanks for joining us. Welcome back to the Bishop Fox live stream here at DEFCON 31. My name is Alethe Denis, and I am on the red team at Bishop Fox as a senior security consultant. Today I have with me Barrett Darnell, principal security engineer at Intuit, Savannah Lazara, OSCP, technical manager, attack and penetration at Optiv Inc., and Wesley Thurner, principal security engineer at Intuit. Welcome. Thanks so much for joining us to talk about red teaming today.
Thanks for having us.
So thank you again for making time out of your afternoon to come join us. We are excited to have a few leadership members of the Red Team Village join us today and talk about the Red Team Village this weekend. Red teaming is a really fascinating subfield of offensive security with lots of unique facets. And I'd like to know how each of you define red teaming, because I feel like there's a lot of gray area when we talk to clients between what is a pen test, what is red teaming.
I definitely think there's a lot of misnomers out there, and people have very strong opinions about what constitutes red teaming, especially when you think about blue versus red, offense versus defense. Anybody who's doing offensive work might say that they're in that red team capacity. There are a few things that I think stand out when you think about an internal red team. Folks, they work with for the company, with the company, instead of having that outside perspective. They get a little bit of insight into the processes that the company is utilizing, and they're definitely looking at it from the perspective of trying to have a holistic view of the organization in order to make some security policy change. So rather than fixing one vuln, making it so that there's a mitigation applied where you don't have to worry about that vuln across your entire enterprise.
Yeah, that's fantastic. What inspired you to start Red Team Village?
Is that for me?
Yeah.
So we actually we're not the original founders. There's someone named Omar Santos who is the founder of Red Team Village, and he brought me in as a volunteer in 2019, and then in 2019 I just kind of always stuck with it. But I mean, we all love it because it's being able to give back to the community. Everybody starts somewhere, and being able to provide that knowledge at depth at like DEFCON, at other events, because we do events even outside of DEFCON, but providing that knowledge at a wide scale.
Fantastic. And I heard that you have a Capture the Flag competition. Did that start today?
Yes, it did. So super excited about this. A little different. Typical thing is qualifying round and then finals round. It's a typical setup like we've had in the past, but this one was real special because of AppSec. A lot of people are familiar with him, but essentially he built our entire finals. Like I'd like to say, like we put a touch on it maybe, but like he built everything.
That's awesome.
But the amazing part of it is it's essentially a Hack the Box Pro Lab, and you'll be able to get a preview of that in the finals round, and then in a few months you'll be able to see that release. So just like what we did last year, but kind of trying to
taking it to the next level. Yeah, that's awesome. So Trevin Edgeworth, who is our practice director for Red Team at Bishop Fox, he's been known to say that red teamers are unicorns among unicorns. Are there any particular sets of skills that you each possess that you see as kind of your unicorn contribution to red teaming?
I think definitely, like my whole career, I've always viewed myself as a technical leader, and so in terms of that unicorn, someone who's very technical, but then can also manage things, organize things, and lead. For Wes and I, we really come at it from a team perspective, and so being able to know your team and to mix and match those skill sets is something that we bring to the table as leaders.
Yeah, that's a great point, because it is a little bit like Ocean's 11. You're putting together the perfect team, but everybody's got that, one or three things that they're really excellent at.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So with new technology tools and things coming out all the time, is there anything that you see right now being a focus with red teaming?
I see definitely cloud. I mean, anyone who's watching will definitely agree with me as well. Bishop Fox, you guys are releasing tons of cloud tools to be able to leverage on engagement, which is excellent. And I've actually used some of them, like Cloud Fox, and I think it's amazing. I mean, Cloud Enum. There's so many different, there's a lot of cloud tools, but that's definitely where I've been focusing lately. I've done a lot of cloud training, AWS, Azure, because it's just going to be like how everyone needs to know. Active Directory, that's going to be the next. Like, you need to know this if you want to go in offensive security.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I think that area is desperate for more skills. As far as skills and the advancement of red teaming, you can't not have the AI question. So do you see any nexus between AI and red teaming where possibly we could have things that are automated to help us without taking away from that red team feel, that really organic, attack emulation?
So I definitely think there is some overlap, and I think if you kind of zoom out a little bit and just think of like the search engine, right? Just enabling that person able to find vulns, search things really easy. Just applying that same thing with the AI, right? Just that ability to research, provide those kind of results. Definitely dig in and analyze things that we can't do at that scale. So I think it's a lot of, for surfacing a lot of that data, right? That very important data that we want to then pull in and investigate further. So I think it just helps, as a force multiplier for a red team member, just utilizing, various models, pulling all that data to then be able to focus on what truly matters.
Right, just kind of filter out some of the noise and do a lot of that task-oriented work that we all dread.
Oh, and speaking of task-oriented work, one easy way to cheat, as long as you're very careful not to disclose any sensitive information into an LLM that you don't control, like just getting report templates, right? I need to report this kind of vuln, and just having that kind of.
Oh yes, yeah, absolutely.
Because no one likes report writing.
Nobody likes report
writing.
writing.
It's the most important thing, and so definitely using the LLMs to help out with that.
Yeah, that's a good segue into what you have as any report writing tips. For folks, because I know a lot of folks get into offensive security because they want to pwn all the things, but then we all discover that it's like 80% communication and reporting is a huge part of that.
I would just say knowing your audience. There's a multitude of different products, right? Whether it's a briefing or even just reports at different levels or just JIRA tickets. Just recognizing recognizing your audience and then just making sure that you're tailoring it for that level.
I think on top of that too, whenever you're doing any type of machines, like hack the box or whatnot, writing how you went through it and then kind of having somebody else review it, say do you think this is a good approach of how I explained it in this blog?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, because sometimes I think we get a little too comfortable with a lot of the ways that we describe things, or this is a basic process, but especially in things like executive summaries, it's really important to try to make things accessible to a wide audience. As internal red teamers, how do you feel that differs from what most Bishop Fox consultants do working on a variety of different types of projects with different types of clients? What's it like to work internally for one client?
Oh yeah, I just foot stomp on what Barrett was saying earlier in regards to scale, doing things at scale. Even as a red teamer, you can do something awesome, find some vuln, do something, but you don't want to fix one problem. You got to fix it at scale. And I think that's the biggest thing is, sometimes with bug bounty researchers, we kind of get a nugget of, hey, maybe, here's an issue with this, and kind of pushing it out at scale, addressing those. And then one of the biggest things is because you're there for a long period of time, you can push on that initiative internally, work out, reach with the developers, and then just continue pushing on that until that, that entire issue is fixed at scale. But turn it back over.
Yeah, and for us, you kind of emphasize one company, but our company is fairly large, a lot of subsidiaries, and so a little bit of different flavor when we look at the subsidiaries, and then it doesn't get boring in any way because for Wes and I, we've done a number of campaigns. We're going on maybe 2 years now, and we've never done the same thing twice. It's always a new technology, new focus. So that's fun. I think that relates a lot to what Bishop Fox sees. You'd have no idea what the client's going to look like until you start testing.
Yeah, you never know what you're going to get.
Yeah,
absolutely. I think that's part of the fun, but also definitely part of the misery when you're like, oh no, I wasn't prepared for this at all. So kind of speaking about being prepared, how do you stay up to date on new types of threats and emulating attackers in a way that's meaningful to clients and to your internal teams?
I think for our industry, Twitter is where things get posted instantly. I mean, just being in the know, being part of servers on Discord to try to get new information, and definitely Twitter, because as soon as something drops, that's where everyone's going to share it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think we have to call it X now.
Yeah,
but
that is true. I am so sorry.
I know. I think we'll get sued if we don't. So yeah, no, I am a huge and firm believer in paying attention to feeds like X, where I think a lot of us go first to learn about new exploits and new vulnerabilities and things that are being talked about in the community. There are several other places, but I don't think they have quite the activity engagement from the community. So that's an excellent point. Collaboration and coordination with organizations' red teams, that's essential as a part of driving security programs forward. What would be your advice to those of us in the offensive security industry with how we can work better with defenders to enhance security programs and create change within organizations?
So I teach red teaming, I teach a lot of offensive security, and the thing that I really overemphasize for folks is that, you know, you might have a little bit of a fun rivalry, but as a red teamer, your one job is to make the blue team better, is to help them get better. And I always say that they have a much harder job.
Absolutely.
They're worried about all the vulnerabilities. I only have to be concerned about one.
Right.
And so one thing that we do quite a bit is we always have an olive branch extended. You know, it's never a ha-ha, you got pwned, but a here's what we did, how did we fix it? And a true testament to always trying to build that collaborative environment is that the directors on the other side, they love our reports. They love hearing the crazy things that we do. It's, you know, that no one gets mad, you know, no one's getting in trouble, and we just all work together to build it. But it takes time to build those relationships.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And I think that's an excellent point to call out, is that collaboration and transparency without making the other teams feel badly or creating that adversarial or contentious relationship is so important. And I think we find that too with consulting in general, because our clients are much less likely to want to listen to us if we are jerks.
Oh, and another thing to add to that, another thing, like kind of a tip for pen testers, is usually the organization you're testing, their security side, they don't have enough folks, they don't have enough headcount, they don't have enough budget, and starting with, hey, what is it that you've been telling leadership that you need that you just haven't gotten funded? You know, like let's focus on that. We can make that recommendation in the report and possibly help you out. Now they're your best friend.
Yeah, absolutely. I end a lot of kickoff calls with, please let me be your anger translator. Tell me what you want me to look at so that we can help you get the tools that you need, the security budget that you need, and more resources, because I think so many of our blue teams are absolutely starved for talent. Because
I would definitely agree with that. And I would say like some of the best campaign ideas, they come from those tips.
Yeah, absolutely. Because they're like, hey, there's this one thing. Sort of like if I do a physical and they're like, so there are, man traps, but there's also this very short wall. I'm like, okay, I'm listening. But yeah, so as far as the Red Team Village goes, what are your initiatives this DEFCON? What are you looking to kind of take to the next level, aside from what we talked about with the CTF?
I think this year, so we did integrate some artificial intelligence workshops into all the workshops we do have. Just making sure we have the hands-on workshops. That's one of the most important things for us. And the CTF to kind of take on that hands-on skills and then transferring it to being able to gamify it and have people go through kind of a real-world like scenario.
Yeah, that's great. And where can people find the Red Team Village during DEFCON?
So it's in the Flamingo, in the Twilight Room, and then the CTF is in Caesar's Forum. So that's kind of where you can go, but make sure to get in line early because you might want to get a spot.
I have heard that the lines are absolute chaos over at the forum, so definitely recommend getting there early. And then, is there anything else with regards to Red Team Village and how people can get involved with volunteering if they want to contribute to the community? You said you had other events that were outside of DEFCON that potentially people could get access to and to help with.
I'll just say one of the biggest things that we have is, we try to tailor to everyone of like a lot of entry level all the way to the experts. So we have a wide variety of workshops, things like that. So we're always trying to get everyone to come in. Same thing with volunteers, right? We want brand new people in InfoSec all the way out to those seasoned veterans. So we want everyone to come out. We have a lot of volunteer opportunities. Just reach out to us on Discord. as well as with the CTF, we're always looking for challenge creators, things like that, but definitely reach out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if I can add on that, especially, we talk a lot about imposter syndrome. Almost every organization out there will gladly accept a helping hand.
Yeah.
Right? All the organizations, I mean, we're spread real thin. We're doing a lot of stuff. When volunteers want to step up and help out, like usually that's with open arms. And that's just a great way to really integrate with that community and to help out and then belong. And now that's your village. That's where you go.
Yeah, and I would say it's an excellent opportunity to network with people that may just turn out being the conduit to your next job.
Absolutely.
So in that, line of things, is there any opportunity that you've had in the past that came out of a networking opportunity with folks in the industry, or anything personal experience-wise that may inspire those that are trying to get into cybersecurity and specifically offensive security?
I guess for me, in 2019, when I volunteered with Omar, that was kind of like the start of Red Team Village. I mean, if I never did that, I would have never been involved with Red Team Village. Because I spent my entire weekend at Red Team Village, because what we run into when we have this, like volunteers don't show up, we lose people, so we have to kind of bring in a lot of people. But with Omar, that station that he was at, literally nobody came. So I just stayed with him the entire time, but we built a relationship while I was there. We always kind of stayed in touch, and I always did more events with Omar, and that was kind of what led up to where I am now with networking and doing stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I know Bishop Fox has really enjoyed being a sponsor of the Red Team Village, and we love supporting that effort because, of course, I think our consultancy definitely benefits from the opportunity to enhance the skills of those who are looking to learn more in offensive security and get into this industry. Are there any particular red teaming skills that you see as being most important for those who are, either trying to transfer skills into offensive security, or those who are seeking to gain education and then move into this industry when they join the workforce?
The one thing that we talked about earlier today is just having that persistence. Because there's a lot to learn. You're never going to know everything, and you have to carve out that time to continue to improve yourself. I know it can get daunting, but nowadays there are a million resources out there. There's 1,000 guides on how to get into InfoSec, but it takes persistence in order to actually achieve that. It's not something that you walk into or fall into. And I would say that just that tenacity and failing at something, right? As pen testers, right? We fail 1,000 times until we get that one success. But you have to keep going in order to get to that success.
Yeah, that's a great point. I know, because I'll go home and there's no clocking out when you're on an engagement. Your brain is just spinning, like, how am I going to get through this blocker? So yeah, that's an excellent point. I think soft skills are very underrated, especially in technical fields. So yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. Just having the consistent drive to learn, being open to learning new techniques, and being able to listen to your teammates and collaborate effectively, I would say is another thing that's just huge. So wrapping up, I wanted to say thank you again to all three of you for joining us. Is there anything else that you would like to share with our audience about what you have going on this weekend with Red Team Village, or where people can reach out to you to learn more about how to volunteer, as well as send questions your way if they want to look for mentoring of any type?
I think making sure, definitely stopping by Red Team Village. We'd love to see you. We have lots of swag to give out and tons of workshops for everyone to kind of come join and see. We also have the CTF, as Barrett mentioned, so we'll be doing the quals and the finals. And Barrett, I'll pass it back over to you to see if there's anything else you want to mention too.
Just make the most of the time when you're here. This event for us is always a thing that we can't move off the calendar, because this is the reunion, right?
Yep.
This is where I see all the foxes that I work
got
with.
Goosebumps. Yes.
This is where I see all of my friends, right? No matter where they are in the world, we come here this week to meet up again. And so, I always have, every conference I go to, I have to make a new friend. That's my rule. And so go out, meet people. You'll be surprised if you're in LineCon for hours. Just talk to the people in front of you, behind you. You'll make a friend that you'll tap later on for help on an engagement or a job or things like that.
Yeah, that's so true. I just thought of a friend that I randomly bumped into in a hallway that was like, aren't you? And I was like, yes, I'm me. And they became essentially my best friend in the universe. And that was just a coincidental hallway meeting. So it's absolutely one of those things that you can't really replicate, that organic meeting of people in real life. So I'm very happy that we're all back here together. So Barrett, Savannah, Wesley, thank you again so much for joining us on the live stream this afternoon. And I wish you every success. I will be in the capture the flag in the contest area tomorrow afternoon volunteering. So I encourage folks to come by. Thank you again for joining our Bishop Fox live stream to talk about red teaming with the Red Team Village. And we'll see you again shortly. Welcome back to the Bishop Fox live stream here at DEFCON 31. I have with me a very special guest, Chris Kirsch. You are the co-founder and CEO of RunZero, former product marketing guru, very passionate about OSINT and social engineering. This should be interesting. Earned a black badge for winning the social engineering capture the flag competition at DEFCON. Thank you again for making time to come over and join us for the live stream today.
Thanks for having me.
It is such a pleasure to see you. I think it's been a few years since we caught up. I know that most people don't know about you, that you won the social engineering competition at DEFCON back in 2017. For folks who'd like to give it a try, do you have any tips or tricks that you'd want to share with them about overcoming the challenges in the vision competition at the social engineering community?
Sure, yeah. So there are essentially two parts to that competition, right? There's the OSINT part where you get a target company and you have to research the target. And that's super, super helpful because it helps you prepare your pretext, understand the corporate jargon, like all of these things. And the second part is being live on stage and actually social engineering in front of a live audience. So you call the company and you have to get certain types of information to win the challenge. And so when you're preparing for the competition, there are a few things. First of all, you have to get really good at OSINT.
Yeah.
So, you know, Michael Bazel's book, Open Source Intelligence, is the Bible for that.
Absolutely.
I've read, you know, he comes out with an edition, I think, every other year, because so many things change. I've read those back to back so many times and just internalized those kind of techniques. Then for the social engineering part, there is a ton of things, like follow podcasts, read a ton of books about social engineering. The book that probably helped me the most is It's Not All About Me by Robin Drake.
Oh, I couldn't agree more.
Really good one for quick rapport building, right?
Absolutely.
And then also one thing that I think some folks overlook is optimize for the competition. Because when you social engineer, like quote unquote, in real life, you might use different techniques. You might want to build the relationship with a target over several calls, over several days, right? Whereas in the competition, you have a very limited time period. So within 20 minutes, you have to get as many points as possible. And so think about that and think about, okay, like what pretext would lend itself to building quick rapport and getting the flags in one go? Which kind of pretexts give you a pivot point to the most points and most flags and so on. So you want to think about the competition as well.
Yeah, I think gameplay and strategy to make as many points in as quickly as possible is probably one of the things that most people don't spend a lot of time on. Especially the first year that you compete, a lot of it is quite daunting.
Yeah.
What do you consider to be the most prevalent modern social engineering threats or techniques that you have encountered lately?
Yeah. So now running a company, there are a few things that we see. So number one, every time a new employee starts, they typically get a smishing message, like a SMS phishing, so a text
from
message.
You.
Typically from me or from my co-founder.
Right.
And so that's interesting because these are private cell phone numbers, so the attackers have to research them and then reach out, right? So there's a lot of work involved in that. It's very hard for the company to do anything about that because it's a private cell phone number. We don't control the device. We can't monitor the communication. We can only do that through education to make people sure people are aware before they start, even, you know, like as part of the onboarding. One type of attack that I've seen more recently that I thought was quite interesting is that email accounts get compromised. So for example, customer email accounts get compromised. They see an invoice from us to the customer in the customer's account and then change the payee account number so that the payments go not to us but to the attacker. And we've even received and successfully caught, thankfully, attempts where the attackers try to ask us for a list of the accounts receivable, right?
Oh,
so any
goodness, yeah.
outstanding invoices.
Right.
Because if they get that from us and they phish us successfully, now they know which customers they can send fake invoices to.
Right. Yeah.
The amount's going to be correct, the vendor is going to be correct, just the account number is going to be incorrect. I think that is a type of threat that cybersecurity folks might overlook because it's not a very technical attack, right?
Yes.
There's no real technical defense to that. You have to train the people, and it's important to train the people that, for example, handle accounts receivable, accounts payable, and so on.
Yeah, that's a really excellent point. I think we do depend a lot on security tools, and sometimes we underestimate the amount of reach that an attacker could have if they can reach our people. And unfortunately, we have a lot of people who are in positions where it's their job to deal directly with other people and with vendors. How and what strategies do you employ to stay informed when it comes to social engineering attacks and other types of attacks and vulnerabilities throughout the space?
Yeah. I mean, I follow the media like everybody else. I listen to podcasts, those kind of things. And it's both general security podcasts, but also specific like OSINT and social engineering podcasts. But then I also think about like what kind of new attacks might surface. And I think, you know, like I'm not the only person who's got this idea. This is kind of like a broader theme right now, is what happens when you combine social engineering and especially not in person, but automated social engineering over text, over email, etc., with generative AI. Like if you can craft really good tailored phishing emails and text messages and so on at scale, if you can, in disinformation campaigns, auto-generate really good messages on social media, I think that's going to be a big new wave. And I think that's probably going to surface for the next upcoming elections, where we're going to see, you know, whatever we saw in the last couple of elections, it's going to be dialed up quite a bit with generative AI.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree, especially because it helps attackers overcome a lot of things, language barriers included, because they can kind of shortcut to grammar that would be more appropriate for a certain region than where they may be located.
Yeah, and you can also mass customize a lot, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So speaking more about putting yourself into the shoes of an attacker, I know that you have done some work learning more about pickpocketing and a variety of other skills. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, I sometimes have stupid ideas and go down a rabbit hole and to learn a skill as best as I can, and then I completely, you know, abandon it. Then I abandon it and never do it again. Like pickpocketing was one of these examples, right? Where my dad got pickpocketed next to me on the metro in Paris. We were there for a family trip, and I wanted to figure out, okay, how could I have defended against that? And then I, you know, found a few resources and so on, but it wasn't that interesting. The more interesting part was like, how do you actually pickpocket? And so I was researching a ton, and I committed myself by submitting an abstract once I'd researched enough to do a decent job, and then I tried to push it as far as possible to learn more and do a live demonstration, and I did a pickpocketing competition as well at that conference.
Oh, wow.
With 100 people, where we had fake items like in bright green, so they would stick out from like the actual wallets and phones and so on that we were stealing in access badges, and people wore little opt-in badges that said like, I consent to being pickpocketed, you know, green items only and so on, so that they could actually test it out. And that was a ton of fun. So there was like 200 people or something like that, pickpocketing for an entire day, each other, and then,
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun. It's been a pleasure to watch you start RunZero and watch it really blossom. Is there anything that you're particularly excited about right now? Initiatives, product solutions?
Yeah, so I'm very excited. We're launching in about a month. We're launching a new type of collection capability. So maybe I should talk about what RunZero does. So basically, we tell you all of the assets that you have in your managed and unmanaged IT, in your OT environments, in your cloud, and with remote users. Because once you understand that attack surface, right, you can start protecting it. And then we give you analysis on what's risky, what does your security coverage look like? Do you have EDR and vulnerability management on all of your devices and all of that stuff? And help you manage that environment well. Because my co-founder is H.D. Moore. He's the creator of Metasploit, right?
Oh, okay.
And when he was doing pen tests, he always saw that it was not the managed devices that would get him into companies. Like the managed devices they knew about, they were protecting pretty well, but it was the unmanaged devices.
Yes.
And so he tried to figure out, okay, how do we help companies find all of the devices on the network, not just the managed ones? And so that's the idea behind the product. So one new thing that we're launching next month is a passive detection capability where we can not only actively scan and integrate through APIs and figure out what's on the network that way, but we can also sniff networks and figure out the asset inventory. And that is important, especially for certain very sensitive OT networks, anything that could explode when you do something wrong, those kind of things.
Absolutely.
We have done a lot in OT, even with active scanning, by choosing a very safe method to scan the network. But in some industries, you just need that passive approach.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. We've all done tests where we've been told not to touch the thing that could break very easily, but I think it's very interesting that you're using technologies that are similar to those that are used by offensive security testers and attackers to help companies identify everything that they have. Because like you said, it's impossible to protect something if you don't know it's there.
Yeah. And one thing I'm always fascinated by is the contradiction in OT networks, that it's both the most critical system that must never go down and the most fragile thing on the planet that you can't even look at.
Right.
And that to me is a big challenge, I think, for the overall industry.
Yes, absolutely. As someone who has worked with a lot of critical infrastructure organizations, it is darn right terrifying how precarious those things are within their networks, and how I don't want to say out of date, but how they run on sometimes very customized setups that can't even be prodded lightly, or they will fall right over.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's really wonderful that you're able to help companies to identify not only what's on their network, but where they have gaps maybe in their security posture that they can help to resolve. Is there anything that you would like to share with our audience today about your initiatives here this year at Hacker Summer Camp and at DEFCON 31?
Yeah. So I will be helping out with staffing at the Social Engineering Village, at the community, right? So there's some talks, some competitions going on with live calls. You've also done one of those, right? And won the black badge. So like you were interviewing me here, but we could have turned this around and done it the other way. That's really fun. So if you are at DEFCON, please drop by the Social Engineering community. I think it's eye-opening if you've never seen that.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, those aren't broadcast because the targets don't consent. And so therefore, it can't be recorded or broadcast under two-party consent laws. So if you're at DEFCON, that's my takeaway. If you're at home and you want some takeaway from this conversation and you would like to try out RunZero, please go to runzero.com. There's a fully featured trial there that you can try out and just run it on your home network, run it on a small part of your company network.
Oh, that's really neat.
Just to test it out.
Yeah, that's really neat. Speaking of the social engineering community, I heard that they were doing their calls today. Have you had a chance to listen in on any of those?
Not yet.
Not yet.
My shift starts at 3:00. I'll be helping out in the room there, but I haven't caught any of the calls so far.
I've heard it has been quite exciting, so
Awesome.
I'm very, very happy. And that village, by the way, is in the link. This year, and I think that's where they were last year as well. So
same location as last year, I think, and it's in the link from the casino level. You go up an escalator, and then it's to your left.
Fantastic. I believe there's also a Recon Village over there as well.
I'm not quite sure where it is,
But yeah, thank you again, Chris, so much for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure to catch up with you. Are there any final thoughts that you'd like to share with our audience?
No, thank you very much. Really appreciate you having me.
Yeah, no, it's been wonderful to catch up, and I'm so glad that you could join us. Okay. Thank you again for joining our Bishop Fox live stream, speaking with Chris Kirsch from RunZero. And we'll get back with you in just a few minutes with our next guest.
Welcome back to the Bishop Fox live stream, The Art of Hacking, here in sunny Las Vegas. My name is Tom Eston. I am the VP of Consulting and Cosmos at Bishop Fox.
I'm Alethe Denis. I am a senior security consultant on the Red team at Bishop Fox.
And I have the pleasure of introducing our last guest of the day. We saved the best for last. And we have Senior Security Analyst on the Bishop Fox Capability Development Team, Tom Hudson.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome, welcome. Really excited to talk to you.
Yes, welcome. Thank you so much for making time this afternoon to come hang out with us. I'm sure there's way more fun things to do out there. But as a senior security engineer at Bishop Fox, can you tell us more about your role and capacity development on the capacity development team for Cosmos?
Yeah, absolutely. So I primarily work on tooling, security tooling, mostly in the prototyping stage. So usually in the situation where we have a problem that we want to solve, whether that's a data problem or it's a capability problem. It's a capability development team. I will prototype different ways of doing those things, and hopefully in a way that's scalable and productizable in some way, shape or form, and hopefully useful to the operators at the very least.
Absolutely. And how does that work contribute to improved ASM for customers?
That's a good question. So a lot of the things I work on are related to attack surface management in general, and primarily around the discovery of attack surface. So many of our customers have truly enormous attack surfaces, and finding all of the little nooks and crannies of them could be quite tricky. So I work a lot with things like our crawlers and other discovery tools internally to improve their capabilities so that we discover more things, which means we have more things to test, which means, generally speaking, we find more vulnerabilities.
Your individual specialization lies in developing innovative tools that improve the quality of intelligence derived from penetration testing and attack surface management. Could you talk to us about how you found a passion for tooling?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I've always had a passion for just every kind of tool, really.
Mm-hmm.
So, I grew up helping my dad repair motorbikes and that kind of thing. And usually he was working on the actual motorbike and I was sort of figuring out what tool we would need next and that kind of thing. And often when you're working with that old crusty stuff, standard tools aren't good enough. You need to grind a spanner in a particular way to get it to fit a nut that was, seized for the last 40 years. So I'd always been interested in tools in some way, but when I started getting into security and bug bounty and hacking and that sort of thing, I enjoyed that stuff. But I found I was at my happiest when I was doing the tooling thing. And I kind of think of it as, the knights are out doing the hacking and I'm the blacksmith, which is, equally as rewarding. It's just a different skill set, but I always prefer being the blacksmith.
Yeah, no, I can appreciate that because sometimes on red team engagements, I much prefer being operations and not the boots on the ground. Is there anything aside from contentment and happiness with tooling that motivates you to create new tools? And how do you assist other professionals in their security research, penetration testing, and bug bounty hunting efforts?
I think primarily it's always about having a problem to solve.
Mm-hmm.
We have an outcome that we want already, and it's either difficult to get to or awkward or sometimes seemingly impossible, or it's just going to be a really large amount of work. And I think one of the ways that I can help the largest amount of people is to create tools that solve those kinds of problems. But oftentimes it's just, I've encountered a specific problem myself and thought, how can I do this using existing tools? And often the answer is not very easily.
Right.
Or maybe it's in some very roundabout way, or more often than not, I'll find that an existing tool does partly what I need, but also does a whole host of other things I don't care about.
Right.
So I'll make something much more focused, but build it in a way built around this idea of the Unix philosophy of having small reusable components. And
just much more efficient.
Build something focused that I can then reuse in a bunch of different situations.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think efficiency is something that's lacking in quite a few tools.
That's a fair comment.
Can you share an instance where one of your tools or methodologies played a critical role in uncovering a significant security vulnerability or helping an organization improve its security posture?
Yeah, absolutely. So just a real quick one. Last night at a meetup, someone came up to me and said, JSluice, the tool that we've just open sourced with Bishop Fox, we ran it against our stuff and found a whole bunch of things we didn't know existed that we're now frantically trying to fix. So that was really great to hear. But I think one of the ones that springs to mind was I was working with a company a number of years ago, and I'd found an employee who had a public GitHub repository that potentially had some information related to their employer in it. And it had quite a long history. And just like what we were talking about, there's tools like Trufflehog for pulling secrets out of GitHub repositories, including out the history. But it's an all-in-one tool. It does everything that you need right there. It looks through the history and it matches the patterns. But I just wanted to see the history, and that turned out to be a little bit harder. So I wrote a tool to do that and ended up finding a private key in the history that that Trufflehog had missed, and reported it to this company, and they ended up making really quite dramatic structural changes to how they handle their internal developers' authentication and their use of individual GitHub accounts and that kind of thing. So it had, really quite wide-ranging effects on their internal policy.
Yeah, I could see that. I know a lot of people that use services like that want to maintain a list of their activities and their own personal one, if they go to a new job. And so we see that quite commonly, where individuals will want to keep things in their own repositories where they probably shouldn't be.
That's why you get them to open source it instead and do it legitimately. That's the way I do it anyway.
Yeah. So you've developed just all kinds of open source tooling. It's freely available, right? From your perspective, what kind of influence have you observed that open source tooling has on the security community?
I think quite dramatic, and especially sort of in the bug bounty world, where prior to the existence of things like bug bounty, most of the security tools were either used by people who were up to no good or professionals with a budget. And there wasn't a great deal available, certainly when I first started looking, that was free and good, but also well suited to the problems that I was facing. But over the last number of years, we've had entire companies like Project Discovery, for example, crop up with a different business model, really.
Totally.
Their tools are free and open source and available to anyone. And they make their money through other means, and I think it's a really great place to be, because you can see, not only use those tools directly, but you can see how they've done things. You can take the ideas and mix them, match them, and they often choose permissive licenses like MIT that lets you do that kind of mixing and matching and pulling things together. I love it. It's great.
Yeah, it's awesome for sure. What are some areas of focus that you want to do, like more research? Like what, any kind of open source projects you're thinking about maybe creating?
Yeah, so I mentioned JSluice that we recently open sourced. I have some ideas of ways to improve that, to get better interoperability with more popular JavaScript frameworks and that kind of thing. And I think that's filling my mind quite a bit as well. And of course, large language models are dominating the tech headlines these days.
Yes, they
are. And I have a few ideas of things that I want to use those for that are perhaps much smaller scale than what other people are thinking about. I'm not thinking having them write the code for me, but solve problems that I've tried to solve in the past that were difficult, like spotting word boundaries in single pieces of text. Like you have a hashtag and it's all one word. Humans can read those really easily, or even just domain names, subdomains. But writing a program that can split that out into a series of words so that you can maybe change one of them and enumerate things turns out to be really difficult. So that's something I'm looking forward to looking into as well.
That's awesome. So obviously, I mean, giving back to the community, mentoring, teaching, I mean, all of that stuff is really important to you.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you approach mentoring, and what advice would you give to people that are aspiring to get into cybersecurity, or people that look up to you because of the contributions you've made back to the community?
I think, firstly, I think my approach to mentoring is primarily to try and explain how things work rather than how to do things. And I know that doesn't gel well with everybody, but I think when it does gel well with them, it gels really well.
Oh, yeah.
Because knowing how to do things is only useful if you only have those exact things to do.
Right.
But if you know how things work, you can figure out how to do anything.
Yeah.
And especially in the security side of things, I think, if our goal is to figure out how to break something, how to make it do something it wasn't designed to do, you first have to understand what it was designed to do and how it does it. I think that's a really big part of it. As for people who look up to me and want to follow in my footsteps, I think probably the recommendation is, well, don't. Find your own footsteps, because they're what will work best for you. But here's the knowledge that's gonna that might help you along the way if you understand how the web works and how computers work. Even at a real basic level. I've run training courses in the past where we've talked about registers and how CPUs actually execute code and that kind of thing, which is, when you're dealing with web security, very rarely comes into the equation. But I think just having that background knowledge almost gives people sort of a new level of confidence in what they're doing. So I think that's probably my main advice.
It's great advice. Great advice. So last question for you. How did you get the nickname TomNomNom?
So I think firstly, I want to say it passes what I would call the nickname test, which is that I didn't come up with it myself.
Right.
I think that's, anyone who comes up with their own nickname, it's rarely...
Not.
Yeah. It's always a little bit too cool for the person it's attributed to, right? So an old co-worker of mine came up with it, and it's actually a really silly thing. We had a small plastic, I think a frog or toad with a circuit in the side, and it made an nom noise. And word association and rhyming took over, and let's say I'm well known for my appetite. So it was quite fitting. And as soon as TomNomNom became a thing, I went and checked TomNomNom.com was available. And because it was, it stuck from that point.
Became a legacy.
That's right. Well, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on the live stream. And it's an honor to work with you at Bishop Fox as well. So thank you very much. Hope you enjoy the rest of DEFCON. Any final words for our audience? How can our everyone watching find out more about you and your projects?
More about me. So I'm at TomNomNom, basically everywhere online. Twitter, I'm calling it Twitter still.
It's Twitter.
Yes.
I'll allow it.
I'm pretty sure that dude dead names his own kid, so I'm calling it Twitter. On GitHub and so on and so forth. I'm around.
Awesome. All right. Well, that is a wrap for the Bishop Fox Art of Hacking live stream from DEFCON. I want to thank all of you for watching the live stream. We much appreciate it. You can find out more about Bishop Fox and all the things we have going on at bishopfox.com. So for myself and my co-host Alethe, thank you once again, and we'll see you next time.